Russ Seaton. I'm president of the Salem City Club.
Use that microphone.
Is this one working? There it is now. Good evening. I'm Russ Beaton, president of the Salem City Club, and we are very pleased tonight for the City Club and Salem Reporter to co-sponsor this event. It's an important event in any community, and specifically I want to thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoy tonight. I hope you learn a lot. And I want to thank our two candidates here, and I'd like to invite you all to give them a hand. It takes courage. It takes courage to run for anything these days. This is a fairly formal occasion, so I hate Chris and Julie to be on first name basis, okay. But what are my options, right? But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Les Seitz, editor of the Salem Reporter, who will let you all know what the ground rules are for this evening, and then we will hear from the Hoys. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. And on behalf of the team from the Salem Reporter, we're delighted that you all took time out of your evening to be at this important event. I want to set a few basic ground rules so you know what to expect in the hour ahead, and we're going to stay real tight on our schedule. The candidates will open with a 2-minute statement, then we will go to questions. They'll have each 2 minutes to answer, and we will be timing them closely. And then at the end, they will have a 3-minute close, and then they will adjourn to the lobby where you're free to ask them questions and follow up on what you hear tonight. Now, for you, you have a few rules. First of all, probably the most important, please mute your cell phones. And we also ask that while you all have your favorite candidates, that we don't have any demonstrations or cheers or interruptions, because we want to focus the attention on where it belongs, which is on Mayor Hoy and Councilor Hoy. Asking the questions tonight with me to my left is Abby McDonald, City Hall reporter for Salem Reporter, and to my right is Cindy Condon, representing the Salem City Club. So with that, let's start with the opening statements. Chris, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Les. Good evening. My name is Chris Hoy, and I'm the mayor of Salem. I'm running for re-election to make sure everyone continues to have a voice at City Hall, not just wealthy campaign donors, not just people connected to the mayor, but everyone. I'm running for re-election because we've built a lot of momentum in Salem, and we can't stop now. I've been volunteering on the Salem City Council for the past 7 years because I believe in Salem. And I've been working very hard every day to earn your vote. Being the mayor of Salem is a big job. It takes someone who understands the workings of a very complex organization. The city is responsible for your water, wastewater, police, fire, parks, library, senior center, planning, streets, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As a deputy sheriff for 30 years and a member of the city council for the past 7 years, I understand that. To be an effective mayor, you need someone who knows how to build coalitions and make government work. I have a record of doing just that. There is no time for on-the-job training. We have too many big challenges facing us. My opponent is trying to convince you we don't have a revenue problem. She's wrong. My opponent was quoted in the Statesman Journal recently stating, "I don't believe we really know what's going on with the budget." I know what's going on with the budget. We have a structural problem that's been building for decades and is no longer tenable. My opponent is trying to convince you that my advocacy for the payroll tax is why you shouldn't vote for me. In fact, she spent about $250,000 on just that one message. She forgets to tell you that I advocated for it because I want to fund city services that you all demand. I want to fund fire, police, the library, and all the critical services. She says we have a priorities problem. That's not true. We have a revenue problem, and I'm working hard to solve it. The payroll tax is in the past, and I'm moving forward to solve our problems. I believe in Salem, and I have a record of getting things done. I'm asking Salem voters to give me 2 more years to keep the momentum going. Thank you.
Okay. Julie, 2 minutes.
Well, in case you haven't heard, Chris and I are not related. I grew up in northwestern Washington. I met my husband Roger on a blind date. We married 6 months later, and suddenly I found myself living in his hometown on Center Street in Northeast Salem. That was 32 years ago. We raised our children here, and sadly, over the last few years, we've had a front row seat to some of the real livability issues facing our city. From our home on Center Street and our business on Lancaster, the struggle has been real. In 6.5 years of restaurant ownership, we've been through a lot. An algae bloom, an arson fire, a pandemic, and the continuation of homeless mental health and addiction issues, along with a lack of appropriate services for those suffering. It's taken courage to survive, and we couldn't have done it without a lot of hard work and the support of the Salem community. I was elected to serve on council in Ward 6 in 2022. I've served for 18 months now. At one of my first meetings with council and the mayor, I heard the talk of the imposition of a payroll tax. I raised my hand and asked, "Can you do that?" The mayor replied, "Yes, we can." "Shouldn't you take a tax to the voters?" I asked. The mayor replied, "No, we're not going to take it to the voters because we know they won't pass it." From that moment on, I knew I needed to dedicate more of myself to Salem and the issues facing it. The mayor recently called my version of Salem a dystopian hellscape. While we only live a mile or so apart, he obviously has no idea what it's like to live and work where the city's greatest difficulties are constant. When Chris Hoy dismisses my lived experience, he dismisses the lived experience of so many others. You're going to hear two very different visions for Salem tonight, in part because I don't believe we have as much of a revenue problem as we do a priority, spending, and forecasting problem. We've come to a point where the people feel misled. The city budget needs an in-depth examination, and as mayor, I will require it. We owe that to the people of this great city. Thank you.
All right, so now let's get to the questions, and we'll start with a question from Cindy.
Julie, the first question is for you. What message did you hear from the community in the vote against the payroll tax?
I heard that the people of this city are tired of having money taken from them and not seeing results. And I do believe that we need a better look at how we are spending all of that money that we take in. And I felt a real drive to do what I'm here to do on council, and that's to ask questions for the people. I work for the people, not for the city, and it's my job to represent. And I will do that.
Thank you. And now, Chris, the same question. What message did you hear from the community in the vote against the payroll tax?
Thank you. I heard that they're not ready to tax themselves to provide the services that the city is currently needing to fund. But I also heard more than just that, because we've had a lot of conversations with the community since that time. They want to fund the services, they just they didn't like that particular method, and I understand that. So I heard very clearly that they're not interested in an employee-paid payroll tax. So now we're looking at other options to find something they might be willing to support.
All right, so Chris, the city is shrinking its budget. Please identify one service that you recommend reducing to help balance the budget and explain why.
Like I've said in budget committee meetings, I'm not ready to reduce any of our services. We have reduced and reduced and reduced over the last several decades to the point where we are at bare bones. I'm not willing to cut any of the services. I want to find ways to pay for all of the vital services that our residents demand.
Thank you. Julie, same question to you.
Can you repeat the question?
Of course. Please identify one city service that you recommend reducing to help balance the budget and explain why.
I think efficiency is a problem, and effectiveness. And I don't think it can be solved by reducing one particular fund or department. It all needs to be examined, and very closely. And I plan to bring the right people into the room to look at it and figure out what's going right and what's going wrong and what we can do about it.
The next question is for you, Julie, first. A task force is considering where to get more money for the city operations. They won't finish until after this election. If you had to decide tonight what source of new money from Salem residents would you recommend to balance the budget?
I don't.
Thank-
Yeah.
Thank you, Les.
Ruh-roh.
Could you please silence your phone?
I just wanted to demonstrate the issues.
Could you please, Cindy, repeat the question, because there's one bit in it that seems a little off to me. I thought the goal of the Revenue Task Force was to be ready in time for the election in November.
It's this election. The
Not the
question
primary.
poses-
Okay,
yeah,
great.
is not for
Thank
the
you
primary.
for clarifying. If you'd do it one more time for me, that would help.
Okay.
Thanks.
A task force is considering where to get more money to pay for city operations. They won't finish until after this election. If you had to decide tonight what source of new money from Salem residents would you recommend to balance the budget?
What I'm hung up on this question is the fact that the city had to hire a consulting firm to the tune of $200,000 to help them form a task force to find more revenue for the city. That's very frustrating to me. I would think we could have handled that job on our own without spending the $200,000. I am looking forward to what the Revenue Task Force comes up with. I think it's wonderful that these folks from a wide array of community are going to come together and come up with some ideas. I'm looking forward to finding out what those are and how we can best apply them.
Thank you. Now, Chris, to you. And do you want me to read the question again?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I don't want to get too far out ahead of the task force because I've been committed to supporting that process, and I want to support whatever the work is. Les, seriously, you've got to silence that thing. The rules were very clear up front.
Your time's up, Chris.
Fair enough. Yeah. I don't want to get out in front of too far in front of the task force because I've been committed to supporting their work. That being said, I think that there are some options that might be viable going forward. But again, I'm committed to what they come up with. But I think maybe an operating levy for perhaps our library, maybe for public safety. I think that those are things oftentimes that voters are ready to support at a different level. And I think that those might be viable. We'll have to wait and see what the recommendation is coming out of that group. But those are two of the things that come to my mind immediately.
Thank you. And I think we have a follow-up with the guy with the phone.
Yeah, let's stick with that subject for just a moment because it is an important issue for Salem. And so let's take another run at that. The question really is, what would you pick as a new revenue source if you had to decide tonight? Julie?
Thank you. I'm in conversation with the state librarian. I want to find out about how to create a special library district so we could actually find a way to fund the library without pitting it against police and fire. I'm learning about that, and I think it's perfectly acceptable to admit that I am not the smartest person in the room, and I'm okay with that. There are a lot of really smart people who can help to figure out these problems and address them. So that is one area I'm looking at.
Okay, Chris?
With the caveat that I'm going to support the recommendation, I would just, to answer your question directly, I think a public safety levy is probably the most viable option. We need to come up with something not only that will work, but that the voters will support, and I think that that's it.
Chris, what's one specific action you would take to address Salem's homelessness crisis?
That I would take or that I have taken?
Let's say would.
All right. I've taken many actions so far. We have to find ongoing revenue, ongoing support for our microshelter communities and for our navigation center. Those are critical in addressing our homeless situation. That's what's been the key to our success so far. We have opened 3 microshelter communities, one for young adults, one for families, and one for just anybody needing a shelter. And then we have our navigation center, which is our first low barrier shelter here in the city for anyone. And so we've got to find a way to continue those.
Julie, same question to you.
Can you repeat it?
Yeah. What's one specific action you would take to address Salem's homelessness crisis?
The greatest thing I think that we can do is work in cooperation with the county. to help those folks and address the needs at the root, which are primarily addiction and mental health issues. We can't do that job without the county, and I feel like there's a lack of partnership in that way. I really feel that we need to take a look at the current contracts that the city has with the community-based organizations and modify all scopes of work, define outcomes, challenges, and opportunities.
Okay, our next question, and Julie again. The city will take an entire year to come up with a plan for gun violence in Salem. Regarding that gun violence, what one immediate step do you want the city to take to increase community safety immediately?
I wish I had all the money in the world, because I would give police and fire everything they need to be supported in this. I was so frustrated at the last gun violence event when the word was given that by the end of the year, we'll have something in place. And all I could think about was summer coming and how the kids are going to have more time without supervision, days are longer, more opportunity to have issues and develop violence in our community. I think something needs to happen sooner, even if it's community-based and it's volunteer. We need to reach out to the neighbors that live next to the parks that are struggling with activities that shouldn't be happening in those parks. Drug use, encampments, you name it, especially in Northeast Salem where the highest gun violence is a thing. Those people deserve to feel safe. And the person running a daycare next to the park should be able to take those children to the park and feel safe.
Thank you. And now to Chris, would you like me to read it again?
Oh, no, I'm good, thanks. Okay. I would just say, first of all, to those people are me. I live in Northeast Salem, right in the heart of the issue. And I would say the number one thing that the city can do, that's bring our community together to have this conversation, and that's what we're doing. It's going to take an entire community response to address this situation. It's not going to come just from the city. It's got to come from the entire community, from all of our nonprofits, to community members, to everybody, to come together and wrap their arms around this problem and solve it.
Thank you.
Chris, the city faces challenging issues on all fronts, safety, streets, climate, and more. What 3 issues would be on the top of your to-do list and why?
So my top 3 issues are finding sufficient revenue to provide the services that our city demands, continuing to address the homelessness crisis, and continuing to deal with our housing shortfall. We have a shortfall of housing at all levels, and we need to continue to do all we can to get more housing built here in Salem.
Julie, what 3 issues are on the top of your to-do list and why?
Public safety, homelessness, addiction, and mental health struggles, and our budget.
Okay, next question. Oh,
Well, let's elaborate a touch. Just a touch to help the audience understand. So, of your 3 issues, how would you move forward on those? I mean, it's easy to identify an issue, but why don't you help voters understand what you would do? Chris, and then Julie.
Sure. We've already talked quite a bit about our revenue situation, but we're exploring all options. We have our revenue task force. I'm continuing to have conversations with the state government to try to find a payment in lieu of taxes, to find an avenue where that will come to fruition. We're looking at all the grants that we can find. In terms of revenue, we're literally looking under every rock to try to find additional revenue to support our services. In terms of housing, we incentivize housing development wherever we can. We have just a limited number of tools as a city that we can use, but we offer tax incentives to development. So, for instance, the new Rivenwood apartments that are down here at the old Nordstrom building, 15% of those units are guaranteed to be affordable for the next many years because of, sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback on my mic, because of a contract with the city through tax abatement. And virtually every one of those apartment buildings that you're seeing built in our downtown and in many parts of the city have an affordable component, because we are partnering with those developers to help them build those units. Really, the only way you can build affordable housing these days is if you have government intervention, because it's just too costly to do so otherwise. And in terms of homelessness, we again, it kind of ties the other two together, where we need to continue to find revenue to provide those services. But we have successful initiatives, we have successful partnerships on our homelessness front, and we just need to keep those moving forward.
Okay. Julie?
Homeless crisis, both for those who are struggling on our streets and those who are unhoused and don't feel safe, or housed and feel safe. We need to do a better job for all of those who are suffering, and I really believe that we have to start in relationship and cooperation with the county to get that done. I'm already in meetings with them, and I'm looking forward to moving forward with a plan that works faster than slower. In terms of the budget, I hear from so many that are unsettled about how the city is spending and how much money there is. When that first budget book dropped down in front of me a year ago, 460 pages, $757 million, and in 30 minutes over a cup of coffee with a girlfriend, she found $1 million error. So what else is in the book, and what's being done, and what's not? The budget needs a real examination, and I will figure out how to do that in the best, most efficient, and affordable way. Homelessness, public safety. Tell you what, when people don't feel safe, bad things happen. It's not just the people committing the bad acts, it's the unsettled feeling inside of a community that creates more problems. Our law enforcement and fire deserve our support, and they deserve to be funded first.
Okay, Julie, next question, you'll begin. A key asset for a public leader is to change a position on an issue after learning new information. Thinking of your public service, can you describe one time when you changed your position on a city matter and how that came about?
That's a really good question.
Thank you.
One time. I didn't change my mind about the payroll tax. I maybe felt a little light on the library because it felt like an extra. And then when I saw the outpouring of the community and how much it means to them, I realized we need to find a way to do this.
Okay, thanks. Chris?
I would say commercial passenger air service. I wasn't convinced initially that it would be viable. I wasn't convinced that we were ready for that. And after many meetings, many conversations, I changed my mind. And that's when I got behind it and supported it, and we made it happen.
So just to follow up on that, Chris, you changed your mind on that, but it was through meetings. What was it that you heard that changed your mind?
I learned more about why it failed the first time. And I thought, I had the impression, I think a lot of people have the impression that it was because the community didn't support it, but really we had a bad model. We had regional air service back then with 50 passenger planes. The price of fuel went up astronomically, and 50 passenger airplanes were no longer economically viable for anybody. That's why you don't really see them in service anywhere, not just Salem. And so when I learned that this model was going to be with 737s and 150 passengers, and they were economically viable, that's when I started to change my mind. I realized, okay, this wasn't about community support, this was about economics.
Thank you.
And Chris, the City of Salem in 2020 adopted a climate action plan to reduce emissions, increase climate resilience, and increase equity. When's the last time you reviewed the plan, and what place would it have in your next term?
Well, I'm the chair of the Climate Action Plan Implementation Committee, so I would say the last time I reviewed it was our last meeting a couple of weeks ago. We are working hard to implement as many of the things that we can. We've done a number of things to help reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We've increased the possibility of denser housing in around the core transit network. We've allowed for taller buildings, smaller setbacks to try to incentivize the building of houses and apartments near the core transit network. That's been one of the huge things we've done. We've created a microgrid out of our Public Works Department where we actually have solar panels and battery storage, so we can actually help that entire neighborhood out where our Public Works building is operate in case of an emergency, and all through solar. We have solar panels on a number of city buildings. We use biodiesel in our entire fleet, in all of our diesel vehicles. There are a number of issues. There's over 200 initiatives that we're working on, and we're trying to prioritize those in things that we can do, things that we can afford to do, things that we have the staff capacity to do.
Thank you. Julie, what role would the Climate Action Plan have in your administration?
It's not going to come as any surprise, really, but I have a lot to learn about that. It is something that I care about deeply, and it's been laughed about, but I was the only member of the Ranger Rick Nature Club in grade school, and I cared very much about leaving the playground better for the person who came behind me when I left it. I do feel very strongly about leaving this earth better than we found it. Are our priorities in that realm for me right now? I've been honestly too busy trying to survive in business in Salem, Oregon, than to worry about that. A lot of folks have that kind of time to spare, and I want to learn. I want to know why it matters, and I want to be able to be helpful. But I want to solve this crisis that we're having, and I want to rebuild trust in the community for our city government.
Well, let me pose a follow-up on that, because it is an important issue to a lot of people in this community. What we didn't hear from either of you is, if you take office as mayor in January, how important is the Climate Action Plan going to be in your administration?
For me, it's very important. We have a new Climate Action Plan manager. It's very important that we maintain that work, that we provide our leadership as a city government and for our community, and do all we can to try to help reduce our impact on the climate.
Julie?
How important? It's certainly important, and I want to learn from the people who know a whole lot more than I do about this particular topic and how we can best serve the community as a city government in this regard.
Okay, thank you. Julie, next question for you. The city's medic system is in distress with poor response times. The city police force says it's far understaffed to protect Salem. In your time already in Salem City office, what specifically have you proposed to address these community safety matters? And please don't make it all about money.
What have I done specifically to address these matters?
Proposed.
What have I proposed? And it can't be about funding public safety first.
Well, that can be part of it, but just so long as that's not the only.
Okay. Funding public safety first. Showing support. Proposed, do you mean in a council meeting? Is that what you're getting at?
Think of it as would propose even.
Okay. Greater support for law enforcement and fire. Getting to the root of our most serious issues right now to reduce their workload. If we deal at the root of the problem, I was asked this question by firefighters. Would you want us to have more to work with, or would you want us to get by on what we have? And I came up with a question, and that was, if you weren't dealing with the houseless, those suffering from addiction and mental illness on our streets, how much less work would you have? And the response was, if you just took Station 1, the workload would be reduced by 50%. I want to help in any way I can to ease the load, not only for police and fire, but for our hospital system, which is facing this every day, all day long, people coming and coming and coming, and no way to really help them. That's it.
Okay, just a follow-up, just because medic system was in the question. Any proposals there, just on the medic system?
Well, we just came through the big change, right? The fire department is now taking over that service from Falk Ambulance, and it's hopefully going to reduce the amount of overtime that's been incurred by Falk not being able to cover that. And hopefully they'll be able to get there faster and have enough people working in the jobs to cover all the shifts.
Thank you. And Chris, now to you. Would you like me to read it?
I would.
The city's medic system is in distress with poor response times. The city police force says it's far understaffed to protect Salem. In your time already in Salem City office, what specifically have you proposed or would you propose to address these community safety matters?
Thank you. Well, since I've been on city council, when I first got onto city council, 2 of our fire stations were closed. I led the effort to reopen both of them, and we successfully reopened them, one in West Salem and one out on the Chemeketa campus. I believe it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Councilor Phillips and I worked to propose 6 new police officer positions so the chief could reorganize the department in a sort of a community policing framework, and I was proud to support that along with my colleague, Councilor Phillips. So those are 2 things that I have done. We also created the SOS team, which is 2. Well, and then there's the police part of that, which is 2 police officers who liaise with our homeless camps. They go out and build rapport with people who are experiencing homelessness. They work with them to try to help them get out of that situation. So those are 2 of the things I've done so far, and I fully supported the shift bringing the EMS service back into the city. I think that anytime you have people's lives at stake, and you try to overlay a profit margin on top of that, that's fraught with problems. And I support public service employees doing that work.
Let's stick with that subject for just a moment, because public safety, both of you rank that as a very high priority for your offices. Share with the audience, how much political capital are you willing to spend in the next term to ensure that fire and police services are protected, even if that requires getting more revenue? Julia, let's start with you.
How much more capital? I would be guessing at that. I don't know how to answer that question. It's not that I don't know who to call to find out. How much capital do we have? And where are we going to get it from? And what's it going to do? Who's it going to pay for? Those are all really valid questions.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for the question, Les, and I'm just going to repeat a line that my opponent likes to use. I supported the payroll tax, and that was a lot of political capital that I expended because I wanted to support police and fire. It was a huge amount. I knew that it would not be popular, and I was willing to do that, not because I thought it would be in my best political interest, but because I wanted to fund those critical services, and I knew that there was no way to do it without additional revenue, so I was willing to take that difficult vote. That's how much political capital I'm willing to spend. I'm willing to do it again because I believe in Salem.
Chris, when you want to assess community attitudes about an issue, what are your key sources and who are your key personal advisors?
I attend the quarterly neighborhood chairs meeting. That's one of the primary places I hear from. We have 17 neighborhood associations, and their chairs meet on a quarterly basis, and I facilitate that meeting. I talk to those folks a lot. I talk to community partners. I talk to people from the chamber. I talk to people at the city club. I am all over town talking to folks about all of the issues, and people are very willing to share their ideas with me, even if I don't ask. So in the grocery store at Roth's, when I'm doing my shopping, I'm talking to people about the issues that they care about. I'm literally in the community all over the place talking to folks.
Julie, same question to you. When you want to assess community attitudes about an issue, what are your key sources and who are your key personal advisors?
Well, neighborhood associations as well. Some more than others are easier to be with and communicate with, and that's okay. The community, I own a restaurant. People come and go a lot, and they are readily sharing their thoughts with me about what they would rather see in our city. I get around, I deliver food all over town. I talk to people in every part of town, not just Ward 6. And I talk to the folks at the city when I can and want their input. I talk to, just everybody. Who are my closest advisors? Those I trust the most. Who are they? Names? My husband.
Okay, next question. Julie, to you. What distinguishes you from your opponent to warrant your election as mayor?
What distinguishes me? Oh my God, we couldn't be more different. I show up. I roll up my sleeves. I'm brave. I haven't been doing this for 7 years. I build relationships. I bring people together to be creative and find new solutions. My opponent's been on council for 7 years. Are we really better off? I think really sometimes you can be so close to a situation for so long that you grow numb to it. And I think it takes open ears, an open mind, and an open heart to actually get a pulse on a community and pursue what it is that they want most of all.
And Chris, the same question to you. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I'm good, thanks. I think that the number one thing that distinguishes me from my opponent is I have a track record of accomplishments. I have a whole litany of things I could talk to you about, things that we've done for Salem that have made it better. I have an actual record of getting things done. Yeah, I'm going to leave it right there.
Thank you.
And question for Chris. How would you go about getting more people involved in city processes, especially people from marginalized communities?
Well, that's a huge challenge that we face and something we're working on all the time. I can tell you one of the things that I did do is I introduced the motion to actually translate all of our meetings into ASL in Spanish. Before that, they were only translated upon request, which, in my area of Salem, it's a majority minority area where most people speak Spanish. And if you have to request that the meetings occur in a language you can understand, the likelihood of you actually engaging with those folks is almost zero. And I think that we have a legacy of that we have to overcome and work hard to fix. This last community violence reduction initiative meeting that we held it entirely in Spanish and had it translated into English. And I have to tell you, that was an eye-opener because the translation was very difficult to hear and to understand. The technology was not great, and it was a very painful experience, so that was a real eye-opener.
Julie, same question to you. How would you go about getting more people involved, especially from marginalized communities?
I live in Ward 6. I've been there for 32 years. There are 8 wards in Salem, just in case anybody doesn't know. Ward 6 is the highest density population ward, 22,000 people in the least amount of space. It's 48% Hispanic. And out of those 22,000 people, less than 2,000 vote. Chris was counselor in that ward before I arrived. It seems to me that not much was done in terms of engagement or education, and I'm working very hard to get that ball rolling so all communities can feel included in the progress that we make here in Salem.
Thank you. And Julie, this is for you. So both of you have served as counselors. Can you describe your vision? You're now running for mayor, and certainly Chris is serving as mayor and running again. Can you describe the differences between a role as mayor and your role as counselor, and what challenges and opportunities come with a change in role?
Well, the role as counselor has been interesting. When I ran for council, my opponent was endorsed by 5 of the current sitting councilors. So I wasn't really wanted in the room to begin with. But that didn't matter, showed up anyway. Sitting on council and realizing that there's a pretty strong movement within that group does make it difficult to accomplish things. Not impossible, though, and relationships grow and change. As mayor handles the agenda and what the council is going to see on Mondays, and I feel very strongly that there's been a small group driving that and not super inclusive to the entire council, and I would like to change that and make it a more collaborative effort where we can come together and figure out what the game plan is moving forward and not keep others in the dark.
Chris, same question to you. The difference between mayor and counselor and the challenges and opportunities both roles bring.
Well, excuse me. The primary difference between mayor and council is that the mayor is the face of the city, generally. I have an office in City Hall. I'm in all the meetings and provide the leadership to move the city forward. My opponent is mistaken when she says that I control the agenda. I don't have anything to do with the agenda, any more so than any other member of City Council does. That's driven by the staff. I can add things to the agenda just like she can, but I don't control the agenda, so I'm not sure where that's coming from. But being the mayor, you're the face of the city. You're the public, the person the public recognizes as the person responsible for all the good and all the bad. So that's the primary difference.
Thank you.
Okay, so Chris, let's pretend you're sitting in this seat. What question would you ask your opponent?
Oh.
That's what they pay me for.
They don't pay me. Just for the record, they don't pay me. Oh, let me think. Honestly, I'm surprised that people haven't asked more about that situation that your paper reported on with the tire business. I want to know more about that. I would want to know, Julie, I would like to know why you thought that was appropriate to talk to your business associates and friends about, and then go to and try to pressure the city into doing business with them. It's clearly a violation of our city charter. We have very few rules in our city charter, but that's one of them. I mean, I took the training on the city charter 7 years ago, but I remember that one very clearly.
Well, first of all, I did not go to an associate or a business owner. They came to me. I had never met them before, and they brought to me the fact that their company used to do business with the city, and the city had stopped that business 7 years ago when they began to follow the state contract. I didn't understand what that was, so guess what? I asked a question. If we can spend less on tires and shop locally, why wouldn't we? That had nothing to do with who that business is and everything to do with how we are doing business.
You'd never met them before?
Nope,
Really?
really.
Okay.
That's
Well-
100% true.
Chris, do you want to respond to that?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to respond to that at all?
I find it interesting since she was on the board of the Salem Chamber, and one of the parties is employed by the Salem Chamber as a contract lobbyist. So that's interesting for me to hear.
Okay, Julie, you're sitting in this seat.
Yeah.
What question do you have for Chris?
Chris, do you think it's effective to be so dismissive of people?
I don't believe I'm dismissive of people.
I've seen it. I've seen it happen to city staff. I've seen it happen to the state librarian. I've seen it happen to other counselors, and I've felt it happen to me. I think it's highly inappropriate, and I would just like to know if you think that is helpful.
The question I asked with the state librarian is about payment in lieu of taxes. That wasn't dismissive. I understood what she was saying because I know about library districts. I didn't need to talk to her about them. I knew what that was about. I do not believe I'm dismissive, but thank you for your perspective.
All right, thank you. So with that, we will end the questions and let's go to the 3-minute closing from each candidate. Julie, you go first.
I love Salem, and in critical ways, it's struggling. In recent years, I've been saddened to see leaders like my opponent refusing to tackle our problems head on. Gradually, we're beginning to feel like this is all we can expect. That this spending of millions of dollars only makes crime increase and more people struggling on our streets is our new normal. I'm running for mayor because I believe Salem's issues require a different approach. The only way that will happen is if leadership changes. We must expect more from city leadership and ourselves. A city grows in response to the questions that it asks. Salem is currently asking, how can we pay for all the services we provide? We have the opportunity to start asking new questions, such as what services does our community need and how do we pay for them? We can fund public safety first, and we don't have to sacrifice librarians or movies in the park to do it. Real leadership brings people together instead of pitting them against one another for personal or political gain. The people of Salem were very clear last fall when they did not want to spend more for a tax they didn't believe in. As mayor, I'm committed to having a more inclusive conversation about our collective priorities so that together we can use the resources we have in the most effective and efficient ways possible. Our city needs to live within its means, which means we need to have a different lens through which we look at our budget. The problems facing us, crime, mental illness, homelessness, are not theoretical for me. I deal with this lack of leadership on a daily basis, as do many others. The people suffering on our streets need us. The business owners cleaning up feces from their doorways every day need us. The 8-year-old who's in 2 years into therapy because of a frightening encounter with a homeless person needs us. My opponent's been involved in Salem government for over 7 years. We've all experienced his style of leadership and the results that leadership brings. When the payroll tax failed last fall, people were loud and clear about not wanting to pay more, especially on a poorly designed idea. Instead of pivoting to match what he heard the voters say, the mayor doubled down and hired a consulting firm to create a revenue task force to solve the perceived problem. In my opinion, that's the most tone-deaf thing he could have done. The mayor works for the voters, not the other way around. Should someone who's had 7 years to find solutions be given 2 more to try and get it right? I don't think Salem can afford 2 more years. Can I solve our large crises alone? No. But if you choose to elect me as your next mayor, I promise to work tirelessly, to do what I've done my whole life, to show up, ask questions, build relationships, and bring the right people into the room to help solve the issues. I don't quit. I've spent my life standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. I'm Julie Hoy, and I would be honored to earn your vote. Remember, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Chris, 3 minutes.
I'd like to thank the Salem Reporter, the Salem City Club, and CC Media for this opportunity to speak to Salem residents. We are just getting started. We passed a $300 million community improvement bond We've opened micro-shelter communities, affordable housing projects, permanent supportive housing, and a low-barrier shelter. Our downtown is in the middle of a renaissance with hundreds of people living in our vibrant city center, with hundreds more units on the way. And we've returned commercial passenger air service to our airport. But it's not enough, because people are still living on the streets, and we must solve our revenue crisis. We have to complete the work of our climate action plan and rewrite our transportation system plan. We can't lose the momentum we've generated by heading down the wrong road. You've seen a stark contrast here tonight. Our last names might be the same, but that's where the similarities between us stop. Salem is moving forward, and we have a lot of work ahead, and I know how to get things done. I've worked very hard to earn your vote. I've shown up, and I've done the hard work, and I'm asking voters for 2 more years to keep the momentum going. Please visit chrishoyforsalem.com to learn more about how to support our campaign. Thank you.
All right. Now you have work to do. Voting in this election for this office and for the other city offices and other offices on the ballot depend on you to exercise your right to vote. You decide, not the people up here, not the people asking the questions, not the candidates, you as the voter. So please, please make use of that freedom that we have in this country to decide who's going to govern us. I want to point out that we've been broadcast live tonight with our friends at Capital Community Media. It's been broadcasting on YouTube. You can find a replay of this entire program on YouTube, and it will be rebroadcast on Capital Community Media in the coming weeks. I want to take this opportunity to thank Chris and Julie for doing what is very tough work to stand in front of friends and neighbors and take these questions and answer them in a very public way. So would you join me in giving them some appreciation for being here tonight? And with that, I'm delighted to say that you've all done a really good job of keeping your cell phones muted tonight, and I appreciate that.
All but one of us.
So with that, I know both Chris and Julie will be happy to visit with you out in the lobby as an opportunity for you to ask questions that you have that didn't get asked tonight. We got a lot of questions from people in the community, very good questions, and we wish we could go on for 3 hours, but we're not going to. So with that, thank you very much for being here, and we are adjourned. Thank you.